Welcome to this Toolbox Talk, which will cover the ship-to-shore safety checklist that is detailed within the International Safety Guide for Oil Tankers and Terminals, version 6, or ISGOTT. The safety of operations within ports, terminals and onboard vessels is of vital importance. Critical to this is the interface that is generated between the vessel and the terminal during the discharge and loading operations that are undertaken within ports. ISGOTT provides clear guidance on how the operational interface between the vessel and terminal should be managed safely. This includes the completion of a structured document referred to as the Ship-Shore Safety Checklist, or SSSCL. This has a range of sections and statements that need to be considered as part of the safety checks carried out by both parties before operations commence, and in some instances, key agreements made and clearly documented in writing. Over the years, this ship-shore safety checklist has come in various iterations. The launch of ISGOTT 6 provides a wider focus on human factors and the risks posed. This emphasises the wider communication process that is required for safe operations to be undertaken. The changing configuration has seen a more in-depth approach to the checklist, clarifying a range of information prior to arrival and ensuring safe coordination and berthing at the port facility. This has led to a need to adapt in the way that we communicate and engage, challenging the traditional paper-based systems with an app that leads the way in the digital transition. The app from Smartflow ensures that the relevant sections are completed and coordinated between both parties clearly and in a timely manner, but also provides a digital record that is accessible by the relevant parties easily. None of this diminishes the effectiveness of the checklist. In fact, it enhances it. The operational interface between the vessel and the terminal involves many complexities, and careful consideration needs to be made to ensure that it can be undertaken safely. Critically with ISGOTT 6 is the recognition that this has a range of layers, commencing before the vessel arrives at the berth, continuing through mooring and preparation for discharge or loading operations, as well as regular monitoring throughout. It is therefore vital that personnel understand their individual roles within the completion of the ship-shore safety checklist. The Smartflow digital ISGOTT solution inherently supports roles and permissions so the terminal personnel, be that planner, loading master, boardman, supervisors and jetty operators, as well as the vessel captain and crew, can view and edit only the data that are relevant to them in accordance with ISGOTT 6. The responsibility and accountability for the conduct of safe operations while a ship is at a terminal is shared jointly between the ship's master and the terminal representative. The ship's master always remains responsible for their vessel and crew, whilst the terminal operator remains responsible for all aspects of operations within their facility, including critical assets on the jetty berth. Representatives for both parties execute key aspects of the ship-shore safety checklist, ensuring the intent of ISGOTT 6 is executed to underpin safe operations. ISGOTT 6 provides a wealth of detailed guidance that is clearly referenced in the checklist. The ship's master and terminal operator have a responsibility to ensure that all under their command are competent and adhere to these guidelines. The ship-to-shore safety checklist from the ISGOTT 6 manual comprises 9 sections relevant to a range of operations and is supported by a signed declaration. The sections are generally split into a range of columns detailing the item number, description of the check to be made, with a direct reference to the relevant guidance within ISGOTT. Part 1 of the checklist refers to the tanker checks pre-arrival. Item 1 asks, pre-arrival information is exchanged. You'll notice alongside this there are numbers 6.5 and 21.2. These numbers refer directly to guidance within ISGOTT 6. 6.5 deals with the security plans and identifies information that should be written within those plans. and 21.2 describes a pre-arrival exchange of information between the terminal to the tanker and the tanker to the terminal. When you answer these statements, you are agreeing that this information is in place. It is vitally important that those completing the checklist have the competence to undertake these checks and know how to reference ISGOTT6. So let's review the relevant sections. There are 9 in total. Part 1 is split into 2 areas, A and B. This is directed towards the tanker to complete and focus on pre-arrival checks, including those required to be undertaken should the vessel be utilising an inert gas system. This should be supported by the provision of a Terminal Information Booklet, or TIB. Part 2 is focused on the terminal pre-arrival checks required to be undertaken and confirmed by the terminal. Part 3 covers tanker checks after mooring. This involves checks to ensure the tanker is securely moored and that a range of other compliance requirements are met. Part 4 refers to the terminal and the terminal checks made after mooring. Similarly, the terminal is confirming mooring in accordance with the mooring plan and that safe access can be achieved, as well as spill containment systems being secure. Part 5 is split into 3 areas. Part 5A is aimed at the tanker and terminal pre-transfer conference. This section is the key joint conference that is undertaken between both representatives face to face and requires communication, confirmation and agreement across a range of areas. 5B provides details of the additional checks to be made for bulk liquid chemicals, and 5C covers additional checks for liquefied gas tankers. Reference here is made to guidance from SIGTO, the Society of International Gas Tankers and Terminal Operators. So let's move to Part 6. This covers the tanker and terminal written agreement pre-transfer. This references key items within the check sheet that requires a written agreement and initialing by both the terminal and the tanker representatives. Part 7 again is split into a range of areas. 7A covers a general tanker checks pre-transfer. This details a range of checks prior to the commencement of operations, whilst Part 7B covers checks pre-transfer if crude oil washing is planned. This clarifies the information that has been passed to the terminal in relation to this activity, whilst Part 7C looks at checks prior to tank cleaning or gas freeing. Again, critical checks are undertaken prior to this activity. The declaration is a joint aspect. This requires a review and confirmation of the sections completed by each party, along with an agreement on the frequency of the repetitive checks being undertaken by the tanker and the terminal. Your signature confirms that parties are satisfied that the entries made are correct to the best of each individual's knowledge and that the tanker and terminal are in agreement. Once signed, the Ship Shore Safety Checklist details the minimum basis for safe operations as agreed through the mutual exchange of critical information. This is further supported by the repetitive checks undertaken by each party. These repetitive checks are split into 2 areas. Part 8 covers the tanker repetitive checks during and after transfer. This section details the item reference number and description, along with a record of the time the check was undertaken and confirmation that it complies with requirements. It's important to note, though, that there is no reference back to ISGOTT within this area. That needs to be married up by cross-checking against the main checklist, which will give you details of the relevant sections that you need to refer to. Part 9 covers the terminal repetitive checks during and after transfer. Similar to the tanker, this details checks made by the terminal representative. Both of these roles are critical. When assigning responsibility, it is important that personnel understand the requirements of the checks and that these are undertaken in accordance with the ISGOTT6 guidelines. In conclusion, the Ship Shore Safety Checklist is a vital part of the communication process between the vessel and the terminal. Its correct use and accurate completion contributes to safe loading and offloading operations. The expansion to a digital format enables a cohesive approach, ensuring that all information is exchanged and collated in one environment. This improves communication and enhances safety. The Smartflow app optimises port operations by minimising idle time, improving operational efficiency, ensuring safety and facilitating seamless communications amongst stakeholders. It is, though, worth remembering that the ship-to-shore safety checklist is of no value whatsoever if it is merely regarded as a box-ticking exercise. It is vital that personnel are trained, competent, and as an organisation, you can demonstrate that competence.